What up, everybody? It's Kingdomhood Conversation. Richard Harrison. I am back after a long layoff. Um, yeah, had to get some Facebook stuff together. But I'm be coming to you every Sunday at 5. My previous shows were on Friday at 3. And that was during COVID because, people weren't actually working at that time. So, so now people are getting back to work. We're getting back to normal, somewhat are a new normal actually. Then I can go ahead and I'm gonna go ahead and move it from Sunday to 5 p.m. And I'm straighten up my mic here. Look a little crooked. There we go. Yeah. There you go. I think I'm straight now. Put it down a little bit. Yeah. So now I'll be on Sunday at 5. So before I get into what is the Kingdomhood, and I want to really bring up this subject because a lot of people don't even know what it is. I have people ask friends, people make comments about what is a Kingdomhood, and I felt I did you guys a disservice because I never really sat down and explained what a Kingdomhood is. And there's a short answer, but also there's a long, detailed answer that I'm going to give. I'm going to break it down section by section as the weeks to come. About what is a Kingdomhood and what is my vision of a Kingdomhood. I mean, it's not about a logo on a shirt or on a hat. That's not what Kingdomhood is about. Kingdomhood is actually a movement. So I'm going to take about 30 minutes today to give you an intro into it. And then the weeks to come, we're going to really get into details. So you guys can really see my vision. Maybe I think God gives all of us a measure of faith. They give he gives us the desire and the ability to do the things, do something special to change the world. And I think the issue is that a lot of people just don't do that. They run from it. I've done that too. Maybe, afraid of failure, scared of success, don't want to put the work in, whatever it may be. But I think this is mine. I think when you actually find, what you are brought here for, I think it changes your whole life. Can't remember who said it, but they said the two most important days in a man's life is the day he was born and the day he finds out why he was born. And I can't agree with that anymore. But before I get into what the Kingdomhood is, I'm sure you guys have been hearing about, or maybe you haven't, about Kwame Brown. This ex-basketball player has been out of the game 20 years. And, he played 12 years, which is success, which is in my mind is success. And he, people keep talking about he was a bust. He wasn't very good and all stuff. And he never really responded back. Right. And then there was his last show on All the Smoke podcast with these two basketballers, Jackson and the other light-skinned dude. I can't think of his name, but other basketball player, and they invite guests on. So anyway, they had Gilbert Arenas and they had Jeannie Buss on there on the show on their show. And the conversation of Kwame Brown came up. And I'm not going to go into detail what they said, but anyway, they disrespected the man, talked about he was a joke. This man had been quiet for 20 years, Kwame Brown. And it's all over YouTube. You guys should go look it up. And this guy just said, I'm tired of this. And he just started to speak up. And the reason I'm bringing this up, not to talk about controversy, but your ambitions in life and dreams and things you're supposed to do will come at you in the most odd ways. They brought this man, they woke up a sleeping giant pretty much. And he has been lighting fire in it. And some of the things that he was saying, they're kind of brass. He kind of cusses a lot and says a lot of things. But the point of what he's saying is about black on black crime, about how like Stephen A. Smith, he's going at Stephen A. Smith too, and Charlamagne the God on the Breakfast Club. And Stephen Jackson, and he calls Becky with the good hair. I don't know why that light-skinned dude name can't. Matt Barnes. He calls him Becky with the good hair. But anyway, some of the things he was talking about is how these guys get on here and they sit up there and put other black men down. Now, how true of that, I don't know. But I do know this. He said that you guys are talking about players and taking food out of their mouth because people kind of hold weight on what these players, you got ESPN that does that with Stephen A. Smith. He's notorious for that. The NBA pays attention to that. And to a certain extent, it can affect money going into their pockets. He talked about that. And he talked about, you don't pay attention to the work I did in the community. You don't pay attention that I took care of my family, bought my mother a house on a golf course and all things. You focus on what I did on a basketball court because it wasn't deemed a great, maybe a Shaq career or a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and these other great centers, because he was a center drafted #1 overall to the Charlotte Hornets, I believe. It was owned by Michael Jordan. I don't know if Jordan owned it at the time, but anyway. And he came out and some of the stuff he was saying was just spot on. They should have left that man alone. But the point for that is how he came out and spoke his truth and how he's lived in his truth. So I set off to say this, we have to live our truth, and Kingdomhood is mine. I just think that it's important. I think Martin Luther King said, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So this is what I stand for. And one other thing, one of the things I mentioned on my Facebook page, there was another mass shooting here in California, up in San Jose. And you have to ask yourself, what the hell is going on? I put this on my Facebook. Why is America? America is considered the country with, it's supposed to be the example to the world, supposed to be the moral, economic leader, social leader, the way it treats its countrymen. And we're supposed to be the example of the world, right? That's funny, because we surpass everybody in every category you don't want to be top of the ranks in. Number one, America has 25 times, not 25 more, 25 times more mass shootings than any other civilized nation. That's any other civilized nation. We have 25 times more mass shootings. Why is that? Why is America, this great country, kills more people via mass shooting than any other country, by 25 times more? You ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about the fact that 90% of the terrorist acts are committed by white men between the age of 14 and 56? Let that sink in a minute. What's really going on here? Have you ever thought about the fact that we imprison more people in this country by far more than any other nation in the world? I mean, like by far than any other country in the world. Racism in America has been noted here more than other countries have dealt with race. But if you look at the race issue in America, it is by far more egregious than any other country. Between 1619 and now, I don't know about before 1619, and other countries have had their issues. You got Jews in the Holocaust and things like that. But America has really led the world in every category you don't want to lead the world in. But we are supposed to be the beacon on the hill. We're supposed to be the great country. And this is there's a lot of opportunity here. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad I was born here. But I'm just saying is we have to pay attention to this, of why these mass shootings keep happening. And, there must have been a deal with the devil somewhere. I don't know what's going on with America, but we have some serious problems. And you got people in Capitol Hill playing political football, and ain't doing a damn thing about what's going on. That's Democrats and Republicans together. I mean, it is a shame that we have another mass shooting. There's also a mass shooting in New Jersey too, but you don't hear about that because that was it was a kind of a retaliation, kind of a gang thing, retaliation thing, or it's more of some previous shootings, and they're worried about this person snitching, and these black dudes went there and just killed a bunch of people at a barbecue. Black on black crime. Okay, so I was just thinking about this. Why is it that we have all these problems, but yet our eyes are always focused on other countries and what they shouldn't do and shouldn't do? Sounds a little bit hypocritical to me. I just had to bring that up. I don't know what the solution is, but I know we need to do something about these mass shootings. And just prayers up to all the families who were affected by these mass shootings. Something has to be done. Congress has to get together and do something and get this shit together. But hey, we don't know if that'll happen or not, but hopefully it will. So anyway, let me get in this. What is the Kingdomhood? As I mentioned before, Kingdomhood is a vision. I was, and this simply what other races are already doing. It's simply what other races, and we've done it too. So I always like to go back in history. So I'm going to go back in history before I start. Between 1850 and 1890, let's say about 1850, there was one black dollar for every 32 white dollars, right? Between 1850 and 1900, Black America started building a lot of media companies and newspapers, start building their own business. In North Carolina, they had their own busing stations, they had busing companies, they had taxi cabs and all this business. So by 1910, the average dollar was it was cut in half. So you had $16 for every one black dollar. Look at the time between 1850 and 1910. Black people was able to cut the wealth gap between whites and African Americans, cut the wealth gap between them and white folks by half. Why is that? Because they were focused on building something together within their community. Now, I'm sure they didn't get it all along. You had rival newspapers and media companies, I'm sure, didn't get along, but they couldn't be in the white mainstream, so they had to build them themselves. Okay, you know about 1921, about Tulsa, and you know about Rosewood. Shout out to LeBron James for actually redoing, executive producing Black Wall Street and what happened and looking at investigation. So shout out to him for that. Okay, so we've actually done it before. But at that time when we did it, we couldn't. There was Jim Crow, so we couldn't live in white neighborhoods. You couldn't go work in a white corporation for the most part. You couldn't go to the same schools. You couldn't go go and shop in white neighborhoods. They wouldn't serve you. So we had to buy from each other. And for some reason, since we had to depend on each other, we were actually better off. And you see, after 1968, the actual Black businesses and Black wealth and everything got on this mass decline, for a number of reasons. But when we had to depend on each other, we did pretty well. I was watching this documentary about donuts, and I didn't know that there's probably about 900 private donut shops, I believe, in California, privately owned donut shops. And Cambodians own 85% of that. They have created an ecosystem within the donut industry. You would think they're making donuts, but the parents build these businesses and they send their their kids to school. The kids come back and they work in the donut shop. There's one called DK Donuts in Santa Monica that they're actually doing a documentary about, and talked about that. But my point for saying that is the Cambodians, they work with each other. Parents build a business, the kids carry it on. They build a community. If you look at China, you look at Chinese people, they build a community. You go to Chinatown and you look at all Chinese businesses, Chinese banks, everything. You think you're in China. And you, as me as an African American, or even a white person or a Latino person, could not go into Chinatown and open up a business. You got, of course, you got cities that are predominantly white, and you even got Mexican towns. Well, Kingdomhood is about building a Black town. We haven't had any since 1921. So when I mean a Black city, I'm not talking about a city where Black people live. What a Kingdomhood is a safe haven for Black folks. Does it mean that other races can't live in the city? Oh, absolutely not. Whatever race can live in the city, but the city is a safe haven for us. If you look at George Floyd, you look at after George Floyd, people still getting killed. We're not safe anywhere. If you move into a predominantly white neighborhood, that becomes an issue. If you're driving down the street while you're Black and you're in the wrong neighborhood, even in your own neighborhood, you get pulled over by the cops and possibly get killed. There's actually no safe place for Black people to live. And that's what Kingdomhood is about. But how do you get that? What is a Kingdomhood? How do you create a safe haven for Black folks, for Black men in particularly, young Black boys? Well, you have to own and control it. You have to own and control your neighborhood. And this is something that everybody else is doing except us. For some reason, we're not getting it together. So when I talk about ownership, and these are the 5 pillars that I'm going to talk about in the weeks to come. But if you have a Black-owned city, you have the banks, right? You have sole control of the money. You have the banks. You have Black banks that invest in that business, that invest in that community, that loan money to local businesses, that can have a business ecosystem, and the money flows in and out. The black dollar stays in the black community, just like it does in the Asian community, just like it does in the Latino community, in the white community. They buy from each other. But if you look in a black neighborhood, most of the businesses are not owned by black people. They're owned by Asians, they're owned by Arabs, and or maybe in some cases some whites. But we don't own anything in our neighborhood. That's why the dollar stays in the black community 9 hours, but it stays in the Asian community, in the Jewish community, 9 days, because they get their check and they walk out of their house, and people that look like them own the businesses. That used to be us when we were stuck in certain, when we were redlined, had to be in certain communities. We had to buy from each other, and our dollars went a lot further. So in some respects, we got to go back to that. So we have banks, because you got to finance everything. You have to be able to loan people money. You have to finance people's empowerment. And along with that, then you control the politicians. One of the main complaints about politicians in the inner city, in the hood, is whether they're Democrat or Republican, they don't do a damn thing. Well, why aren't they doing anything? First of all, there's no excuse they should be doing it. But do black people vote? Yeah, black people vote. But black people don't finance anything. If you want a politician to do what you want and change the look and feel of your city and be really in tune to what you need him to do, you got to finance their campaign. You can vote Democrat or Republican all you want, but where they're going to be endeared to, the people who finance their campaigns. We don't finance a damn thing, so we have no economic power anymore. Now, we do spend $2 trillion and drive this economy, but we're not owning and controlling anything. So we're just mass consumers, and we're not producers in ownership. Okay, so that's two. So black community have the banking structure, the financial power, and then with that, you buy your politicians. You buy them. What do you think all these why the Republicans vote the way they vote? Because the millionaires and billionaires and corporations have bought them and say, this is how you gonna vote, and this is how you gonna roll. And that's what they do. So you have the money, and then you can finance your you finance your politicians. Now, the thing is, if you have a black bank, what black banks do? They need money. So you got to put your money in it. So the people in that community will put their money in that bank, right? And I think we can have it like this. This would be my own, idea. We give 10% of our money to churches. These useless black churches, they ain't doing a damn thing for the black community. If you give 10% of your money to your church, why can't you give 10% of your income into a black bank? And then along with that investment, demand that black bank reinvest in that community and support black businesses. Give house loans, business loans, the startup businesses, or maybe personal debt loans to pay off your debt. But if everybody in that community put 10% of their money into that bank as an investment, you should have your checking account savings out there, but really invest 10% into that bank, we'd have the money to do this. You have the banks, you have the politicians. Then with that, there's three other things. One is, and I think they could be based on the order, they could go in any order. But then I'm gonna go hospitals. Okay, hospitals in the black community, because when people get sick, they have to have healthcare. They have to be able to go to a doctor and get treatment. You got to keep people healthy. So you got to have a black hospital. You got to have a medical facility that deals with all the specific ailments that black people get. If you get like black women who are twice as likely to have a stillbirth than a white woman, that's a problem. If you have black men that have a higher chance of have higher cases of diabetes, higher cases of hypertension and heart attacks than white men, then we need a specialized health system because we got to keep us healthy. Now, along with health, what is a big part of health? What you eat. So we have grocery stores in this particular neighborhood that has healthy cultural foods. Okay, and we get rid of, if you notice the black community, what do you see in the black community opposed to upper echelon white neighborhoods? You see a McDonald's on every corner, fast food restaurants, liquor stores, NIC check cashing places. Matter of fact, NIC check cashing places are 8 times more concentrated, likely to be concentrated in Black neighborhoods and Latino neighborhoods than they are white neighborhoods. Why? Because white people ain't going to NIC's check cashing, paying these high ass fees to cash a check or to pay their bills. Okay. So we have healthy foods. We have vitamin shops, Black owned vitamin shops that have those, like there's one in Simply Wholesome, and there's some other around the city. But they're not particularly in a Black community. So we have healthy food. So we go back. So we got the banks, we got the politicians, we got hospitals, and we got grocery stores. Okay. So that's 4. So then we go to police. Policing is always a huge issue, right? Well, then if you financing your community and you own and control that community, and you own and control the politicians, then you definitely can own and control the police department. Here's what policing would be in the Black community. First of all, there's a citizens review board of police rules. Here's the rules. A police officer cannot live, for example, like when I was growing up in Inglewood, under Daryl Gates regime, that terrorist group. All them cops lived in Simi Valley, but they were being policing in South Central, and and Black folks were animals, or they're animals, because you live in a lily white Simi Valley where they only allow Black people to go in, but you want to come down here and police doesn't treat us like we're animals. That wouldn't be allowed. Police officers would have to actually live in the community or around that community that they're policing. If you don't want to do it, then don't police here. Matter of fact, maybe the police force should be all Black. I don't know. But I knew one thing: you have to do a community observation before you can work. So, in other words, before you actually allowed to really get on the street and police a Black community, you need to live or do a 90-day, 6 months observation in that community and get to know the community. Get to know the people in the community, the culture, how they think, what's good, what's bad, what are their challenges, their attitude towards the police, and all that. That training also should be done in the police academy, but you also should have to do a 90-day observation once you get out in the police. So you don't pull over a Black man and automatically consider him aggressive, animal, big, strong ape that you got to shoot at all damn time. In regards to when shootings happen that are unjustified. And this is why the George Floyd bill is so important, because it allows the feds to go after these people. But it goes before a citizens review board. This is a kingdomhood. It goes before a citizens review board. And the citizens look at this case and say if should it be prosecuted or not, or should this officer be fired. Another thing is police officers have to carry their own insurance, because here's what happens. With the George Floyd person and Breonna Taylor and all these other people have sued. God bless them for getting money. God bless them. But what happens is you're suing the city, and the city, you're already taking money from a cash-strapped city. And then they say, okay, we don't have money for parks, and we don't have money for roads, and we don't have money to do this. We don't have money to do that, because we're getting sued all the time. So to avoid that, the police officers carry insurance. And then their pension, what it is or whatever they got, also will go to the victims. Okay, so that's going to knock out all this shooting. When you start dipping in people's pocket, all this shooting stops. It'll cut down. I'm not saying it'll never happen, but it'll definitely be cut down. So now you have the police under control. So you have actual Black community, a kingdomhood. And then there's another one too, education, because you got Black kids and brown kids who are sitting down for 8 hours a day to be miseducated, to be part of a biased education system that doesn't really help them be successful and move and operate in this world as a Black boy. So the education system would be more geared toward African American empowerment. They do the same in the Asian community, and they do it in the Jewish community. There's this Jewish school up on La Cienega, I believe it's La Cienega in Olympic. If you ever, it's right on the left side. It's this big green building, and that is a Jewish school, and that's all they teach. Is I'm sure they teach standard education, but the cultural and all the education is sit around the Jewish religion, the Jewish faith, and Jewish culture. Okay, they do it in Chinese. This American system, is a whitewashed education system. Okay, for example, you know, when our kids learn about history, they learn very little bit about their history, which makes them not feel really empowered, and they learn all this stuff about these white people that are so-called great, but yet they were slave owners and torturers and everything else. So it's not an equal education program, and as far as teaching Black history as opposed to white history, it's not equal. So the kids are sitting down, bored, and then when they get up and move around, they're suspended or kicked out of school. Black kids are 4 times more likely to be kicked out of school than white kids. Okay, and as all the studies show that kids learn better when they're up and moving around, not sitting down. So that is what a kingdomhood is from a very broad brew, and I'll go into details about each as the weeks to come. But kingdomhood is a city that was built by, like Black Wall Street, like Tulsa, and like Rosewood. It was built for us and by us. And you know, nowadays I was having a discussion. I'm working with this guy named Bashir. He's known all around the country, all around the world as working in the community. And I brought this subject up, and it was funny. The fact that we don't have any Black towns across America with the 5 pillars I just mentioned, it's 50% public policy and 50% personal responsibility. You'll always hear me say that. You can't blame the government and whoever, the system, racism, on everything. Half of this problem is us. Here's an example. When I brought this situation up about bringing up a Black community, and this lady was saying, the first thing she says to me is, well, I have a degree in economics, and I'm telling you that's not the way it works. What do you mean it's not the way it works? First of all, what does your degree in economics got to do with the tea in China? This has nothing to do with degrees. You know, you got some people, and I see a lot of them on Black folks, man. They're so educationally holy, they ain't no real world good. I don't give a damn about your degree in economics. What does that have to do about Black people building having their own city, having a kingdomhood, having a Rosewood, having a Tulsa? We done it before in the 1920s. Why can't we do it now? And she went on to say, well, because they bombed it. Okay, that was 1920. They didn't have social media in 1920, and they also had Jim Crow, and they can do things without any repercussion. They can't bomb a city now. We got social media. They can't get away with that now. Okay, Jim Crow is dead. You can't Jim Crow. Does racism, systematic racism still exist? Oh, absolutely, 100%. We know that. But I got all this pushback. And this lady was saying, well, they bombed Philadelphia in 1984. I said, yeah, that was under Reagan. And Reagan empowered the police and militarized the police to do that stuff. That was 1984. But, you know, the city that they bombed, it was already really torn up anyway. It wasn't a thriving, bustering, you know, a thriving economic power within the Black community like Rosewood and Tulsa was. It was already a tore up city. That doesn't excuse them bombing it. But I'm just saying there's a huge difference in that. But when you talk about this, Black people, us, give you the most pushback. You get the most pushback. It don't be from anybody. It be us. We are our own worst enemy. And I think what it is that Black folks don't want their own city. They don't want to be accountable to each other. For whatever reason, I think because since slavery, we have been taught to hate ourselves, and we have been taught not to work together, not to trust each other, not to be, and every other race is doing it except us. You got Cambodians, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, East Indians, Jews, every other race that comes together and builds something. And we are the ones that built this country and can't get it done. At least again, we can't get it done again for whatever reason. So that's what a kingdomhood is. There's about 12 cities around the country for sale. If we can spend $2 trillion on buying things, like for example, Black women spent $12 billion on hair. We spent $3 billion on Coke, $2 billion on Michael Jordans. But how much have we invested? How much do we own and control? When Black folks were freed in 1865, so-called freed, we own 1/2 of 1% of America's wealth. In 2021, Black folks own 1/2 of 1% of America's wealth. Is some of that due to Jim Crow and systematic racism? Yes. But some of it is our fault, where we spend our money and what we do. If you had a city, and a Black city, and you had to take, and to be in this Black city, to invest in it, you automatically had to give 10% of your check. It would automatically be deducted out of your check and went into a Black bank in that community. Automatically deducted. I don't think Black people would want to do that. But we can go give our 10% of money to these churches that ain't worth a damn. That's sucking money out of the community and not putting it back in. Oh, we have no problem doing that. Oh, no problem. But when it comes to pulling our resources together to build something, a community, for some reason we keep falling short. Look, we done protest, we done lobbied, we done petitioned, we got incremental change due to some laws, and they are still doing the same thing that they were doing in the 1950s. A cop can shoot a Black man and get away with it. They can do it now. Racism still exists. They can find ways to stop you from living in certain neighborhoods, stop you from working for certain companies. They will not allow Black people together. Now, there's always been Black people with individual success, but as a mass number, as a collective group, Black people are and you can look at it for yourself. Black people are, I think actually Latinos have passed us in actual wealth as a race, as a whole. We are like last. We are last. Okay. We are the bottom of the totem pole in economic power. And I'm talking about ownership, investment, and what we own and control. Now, here's a problem with us. As far as how much money we spend twice as much as the other races, but we own less than the other races. That's our fault. That's nobody's fault but ours. Okay. That's nobody's fault but ours. But we need, we've been duped into, if I get a college degree and I'm moving to a white neighborhood, I made it. I was listening to when I first started. I talked about this Cambodians. I'm sorry, the Cambodians that own all the donut shops. They get a degree, and they come back and they put the money back in their community, and they're successful. We get a college degree, and we go to move into a white neighborhood, and we think we made it. We're the only race that does that. No other race does that. White people get education and get a job or go play professional sports, and they go right back to a white neighborhood. Asians do the same thing. Jews do the same thing. East Indians do the same thing. Arabs do the same thing, but not us. Now, I understand we have these cities, these hoods that are filled with gang and no resources, and the schools are terrible and things like that. I get that. So, I mean, you want to get out of that stuff. But why does it keep happening? Because there's no reinvestment back in those communities. There's no dollars that are kept in the community to rebuild all this stuff. Because why is there drugs and gangs in the inner city? Why is it? Because there's no opportunity. They don't walk. You don't get a Black boy that wakes up every morning and walks out and sees a nice community and sees, Mr. Williams owning the liquor store on the corner, and Mr. Jackson owns the dry cleaners, and Mrs. Edison owns the grocery store, and Mr. Thompson has the auto repair shop, and Mr. Donovan has the body repair shop. What are they seeing? What are we showing our young boys? I mean, there's no opportunity. They're not seeing the opportunity. When you have Asians that wake up, East Indians, Jews, Mexicans, they get up, they wake up, they walk in the community, and they're buying stuff and seeing the community. They're seeing the men thriving within that community. So it curtails drug and gang use. Will it be some trouble? Yeah. I mean, the biggest drug deal I ever seen was in Beverly Hills when I was in high school. So where there's money, there's going to be drugs. Yeah. Whether there's going to be crime, yeah, there's going to be crime. But to the extent that it is, no. If we had a thriving black town, we would not have all the gangs and drugs. You can intervene all you want. You can do gang interventionist crime intervention. You can do all that. We got to invest money into these communities, invest money into these young boys, invest money into systems and programs that can create a pathway for them. They don't need to be lectured and talked to and stay out of gangs and stay off drugs. What they need is an investment by black folks, by black men, black women, black businesses, black banks that are investing into this community, investing into education, teaching them how to grow their own food, teaching them how to start a business, teaching them how to invest, giving them critical thinking skills, teaching them their history so they're proud and strong of who they are. When you rear these kids like this, they won't be in gangs and drugs. By the time they're in gangs and drugs, in most cases, it's too late. Wasn't it Frederick Douglass said that it's easier to raise strong kids than to repair broken men? We too late in the game. He's 17, 18, and you want to give him talking about stay off drugs and it's too late by then. When these kids are born, by the time they hit elementary school, they need to be in a community that supports their growth as a black man in this world. That encourages them to go get education and come back and work in the community like the other races do. That's what we're missing. That is to me, that is the only thing left to do. Some of you other guys, may have a different opinion, a different outlook of it. But I don't know what else there is. We didn't protest and burnt down stuff and screamed and crying mothers and all that stuff. We didn't got laws changed. We didn't went to Capitol Hill. We didn't marched on Washington, and nothing has changed. I mean, very little has changed. So the only thing that I see left is to actually build a community where you control the jobs, where you control what comes in, what businesses open up at community. You have authority over the police. You have a say-so to the politicians. You have a hospital. You have healthy food in your community. You determine what those teachers teach your kids. You're a part of creating a curriculum that is about supporting black kids. Are other races allowed in the community? Absolutely. Hell, black people go live in white communities and they have to adopt to that community. Oh yeah. Whether you live in a Jewish community, if you go to a school where it's predominantly Latino, you're going to have to adopt to the education standard. You go to a school where it's all Arab community and the Arabs are heavily involved in what the curriculum is, and you go over there, they're not going to change their curriculum for you. I know people, wealthy black people that went to the kids, they sent their kids to Jewish schools. It was a Jewish school, but they sent their kid there. Now you're going to get the biology and the math and the science and all that stuff. You're going to get all that. But there's a certain part of that education that is for the Jewish kids because they want to promote themselves. They want to promote their culture, their standards, and things like that. We need that. That's what a Kingdomhood is. It is a safe haven for black folks, built for black folks, by black folks. It's not about a fancy logo on a shirt. Matter of fact, when I first started Kingdomhood Conversation in March of 20, I didn't have a clothing line. I mean, this was not even, this came later. I just said, I just want to start putting a tag on the shirt, and building my own, line because I wanted to represent it through apparel. But this was my original vision of Kingdomhood, is supporting our young black boys and creating a community that they are safe in, that they feel protected, that if their father is missing, other men step in. Other men step in if their father is missing. And they're protected and looked after, educated and loved, and reared. And they know that they're loved and that they're wanted and they're treated with certain respect. Why do you think people join gangs? Why do you think people get on drugs? Because they have a great community, because they have a loving father and mother at home, because, you know, they have a community, that a thriving community like a Rosewood that they grew up in. Do people get bored? But that's mostly white folks. You got the white dude that be bored, grew up rich, and, you know, have everything, and then, you know, walk into a grocery store and kill up every damn body. That's mostly white people do that. Now, in our community, Black people have dealt with a lot of trauma. Yes. And that's why we have a lot of problems. Ain't nobody done nothing to white folks, and they do all kind of crazy stuff. So we need to have a system that supports young Black boys and girls. That is the only way this is going to change. Again, when you can cry, you can mope, you can get laws changed, you can complain, you know, you can burn stuff up, and you can hold up signs, and none of that has worked. None of that has gotten us to where we need to be. The only last thing to do is to build a kingdomhood. And I think we can do it. We just got to want to do it and be willing to work together. So that's all my show for today. I just wanted to introduce what a kingdomhood is, and what my thought and my vision is for it. And then in the coming weeks, I'm going to talk more. I'm going to talk more about banking, and how my vision is how banking would be in a Black community, and how we can build power within the bank. And nothing I'm doing, nothing I'm going to tell you is my original idea. I simply watched what the Asian people are doing, and how they cycle their money, and how we should do the same thing. I'm telling you, everything, the answer to all our problems is money. Because money will build your community. Now, it's not going to solve every problem. It's not going to make it a perfect city. There's no such thing as perfect city. There's going to be things that happen, but it will not be to the extent that it is now. If you have money, because look, here's an example. In upper class Black, where Black people live, there's no upper class Black town that I know of, but upper class Black cities are Black towns, are towns where Black people live. There's not a lot of crime and drugs and gangs. Where you see where Black people got money and they living good. You don't see that. You see that in the lower income neighborhoods. And it's not a Black thing. Any psychologist or sociologist will tell you that in a city where it is cash strapped, where it is impoverished, where there's white, Black, or Latino, any other race, you go to India or any other places, there is crime, there is drugs, there is violence. Okay, so it's about money. It's about building a financial support system to grow it, to build a city on. So that's what kingdomhood is. Call me crazy, say it'll never work, it's too far-fetched, but hey, people said that about a lot of things we have now. I believe it can be done, and I'm going to work to be a part of the system, to help to see it get done for as long as I have breath. But that's what a kingdomhood is. If somebody had, told somebody was close to me that the hood part was the problem. I can't get over the hood. Well, did you miss the kingdom? The hood is just short for neighborhood, because I didn't want to have kingdom neighborhood. That's too long. So I put kingdom hood. I just took the neighbor out and just left the hood there. But it's a kingdom hood. It's a kingdom. It's a kingdom. And the hood part is what usually they call Black community. So I want to tie those two together. So that's why it's called kingdomhood. And so that's what it is. That's what I'm going to talk about. That's what I'm going to push. Pushing Black ownership and business, home ownership, investments, building a community with that. That's the only, that is the last resort. Here, I'm in with this. One of the greatest leaders of our time, not Malcolm X, but Martin Luther King. He said that he fought all these years for civil rights. And he said in 1968, before he got killed, I think it's probably around 67, he said, "I believe I led my people into a burning building." Because he focused all this time on trying to get laws passed and integration and equal rights and all that stuff. And he realized it was about why he was getting incremental change. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the Housing Act 1968, I think that was passed after he got killed. He was getting incremental change, but Black people were still poor and suffering and hungry. Hell, you can't focus on Learning and you hungry? That's why the Black Panther Party started the food program, because they said a kid can't learn if he's hungry. Yeah, the Black Panther Party started a food program. That's what they came from, despite what people tell you about them. But even Martin Luther King realized that it was about money and economic empowerment. That was 1968, and we still haven't figured it out yet. So this is what I'm on. This is Kingdomhood. Join the Kingdomhood movement. Being part of our family. And we're going to go and do big things together. God bless you guys. We'll see you next week. And thanks for tuning in. Oh, yeah. Happy holidays, you guys, right? Enjoy your barbecue. Stay safe. Have fun. Bye.